on. We are. Ooh. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly show of What is School For? This is the sister show of Classroom Without Walls. And this show is really inspired by my interview with Seth Godin, who really pushed me to explore this question, the purpose of education. On this show, I interview entrepreneurs, parents, students, educators, principals, and we come here, we discuss, debate, and disrupt education, and talking about the purpose of education. And today we are going to discuss the real cost of education, and is today's education actually preparing tomorrow's workforce? And I have the best guest of honor to come to this show and talk about this. My dear friend, my role model, superstar, superwoman, Julia McCoy. And if you guys have never heard of Julia, I don't know what's going on with you in your life. You need to, hold on. Let me share and follow Julia on Twitter. And Julia is the CEO of Express Writers, and she is a best-selling author. And she started her business at a very young age. And we are going to discuss more about her story, her journey later in the show. And Julia is the content marketing expert. I took her course on content writing, copywriting. I loved that course. Everyone should check it out, I think. So really, really honored. And Julia has actually a new book, and this year it just came out. And we are also going to discuss a little bit about her new book. Like for someone like me, I struggle with writing just one book. I don't know how you can have so many best-selling books. Yeah. So Julia, really, really excited and really honored to have you on the show. And welcome, my dear friend.
Thank you so much. Oh, it's been too long since we even chatted. I love what you do, everything you do. I love watching your success and how quickly it's taken off. I think you recently quit your position as a professor.
Yes.
And now you're doing this full time. I just want to say congratulations. That's awesome.
That's
the world needs you, people like you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, and we are live. I'm having some hard time going live actually on Periscope, but we are live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube. So everyone, if you are live with us right now, let me know in the comment section where you are joining us live from, social media wise and geographically speaking. And thank you for spending a Friday with us. And I hope you guys are safe. Yeah. So Julia, you are pretty amazing. And you started your business with only $75 and when you were 19 years old. And slowly you grow that business, a content marketing agency, into a multi-million-dollar business. Congratulations. But that's not even it. That's not even it. And you actually started learning more about internet marketing when you were as young as 13 years old. Very incredible. So share your journey with us. What inspired you, to start a business at such a young age, from your parents, from school? Like, what was your story? So share it with us.
Yes. Well, now that I have my memoir out, I try to ask anytime I'm on a show or speaking, I'm like, which version of the story do you want? Do you want the nutshell or the full everything that happened? So there was a lot of dynamics I had growing up that I think helped shape the skill sets that I have, that I've pursued full time. And one part of my life growing up that I've started telling in my new book, Woman Rising, is that I actually grew up inside of a cult. So we wore long dresses. There were extreme rules.
Wow.
And I hid that for the majority of my first few years in business because I thought that was a not so good side of my story. But what I learned whenever I started to tell that story about 5 years into running my businesses, which was about 3 years ago, I started telling that story for the first time, and it went live first on Huffington Post, and I got 200 messages in one day from people saying, you need to tell this story. This is so inspiring that you were in a cult. And inside of that cult was how I discovered my passion and built my business. Wow. So it was a lifeline for me. And I think that's why I pursued it with so much dedication because it was a lifeline. But thinking bigger picture, right? And how can this apply to someone who's like not in a cult? I think what allowed me to start something that is so successful that I've been able to embrace as a full-time career without any college education on the topic, without really a mentor, even at the beginning,
Wow.
was gut instinct. I just followed instinctual drive. And we all have that. That's what I'm learning as I go through this journey. Like we all have that instinctual drive. But I think the school system, the education system, kind of, it's anti-instinct. It doesn't really teach us to tap into our gifts.
100%, 100%. So before we dive into talking about college education, I want to understand your story a little bit more, because I think there's so much that we can unpack. There's so much that you can share with us. You know, you
True.
mentioned even like in the early years of your business, now it is even more successful. But even in the early years, you really had lots of rapid growth, 200%.
Yeah.
So looking back, and I want you to really share with us, what do you think are some specific maybe actions or attributes that you have or big decisions that you made that really help you like have that level of success even in the early days? Because so many startup companies, I don't know the specific number, I think many of them, they fail in the first 2 years or 3 years. It is hard with you, as you mentioned, no college education, no parental support, and $75. So I'm sure it's not as easy as what you have just described. So share with us, what do you think are some of the specific things that really help you, like decisions or personal attributes, get to that level of 200% growth? Amazing. Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, the stats are not in favor of businesses surviving. So, and whenever I think there are a few things that contributed to it being a long-term success instead of just something that failed quickly. And those things would be, first of all, I found something to do that was closely tied to two things. Number one, my passion, and then number two, what I was actually talented at. And that is something we'll talk about later, that again, the school system doesn't cultivate that. So we really don't even learn how to tap into our talents and our passion. But that was how I discovered content writing. And then I mapped that to growing businesses through content writing. So at the beginning, I was 19, 2011, just like you said, I had $75. That was the last amount of cash in my savings. And one morning I was like, okay, I know that I'm probably not going to succeed at college. I don't like nursing. I have no passion for it. And on top of that, I don't think I would actually make a good nurse in the long run. You have to think on your feet, like major credit to nurses. What they do is so hard. So I realized that. And that morning that I realized, okay, I don't think this is what I love doing the rest of my life. That same morning, I challenged myself to find something that I could make a career out of. And that morning I did a Google search, how to make money writing. And that was the beginning of the entire journey. And then the rest really came through a ton of dedication. And that's the part that, we don't see. It's so easy to see on the outside. Oh, someone succeeded. They made this many figures. They're doing this. But on the inside, what you don't see is the amount of dedication and hard work it takes to really build that up. And it's really just commitment, even if you don't see the rewards yet, but you know that they're coming down the road. So that commitment is definitely what got us to the next level and helped me achieve that 200% growth every year within a matter of just really since the beginning. So it was a ton of commitment, and commitment for me looks like several 4 a.m. mornings.
100%.
I saved money by coding my own website at the beginning. I used that $75 to create an LLC and then buy my brand name. So I bought my domain name, I bought my hosting, and then everything else was self-taught, self-learned. And what I've seen with our successes, it's really mapped to what you as a business owner, entrepreneur, what you learn. So personal growth is critical. And sometimes the best way to achieve personal growth that gets you to that next level, whether it's a doubled pay rate you charge your clients, whatever that looks like, personal growth is mapped to actions. So you
Mm.
sit, learn, read, that's great, but you have to at some point put it into practice. And at the beginning, I was a horrible writer and I was getting paid
Wow.
like $2 an article, but that was how I learned. I
Mm.
learned through cultivating that with a lot of practice. So you're right. It really comes down to a lot of commitment, a lot of hard work, especially at the beginning. There's no way to sugarcoat that. I wish there was. I wish there was a hack. But, it takes commitment to become great at our trades.
Yeah, totally. Like, I love how you talk about this understanding of the self. I mainly worked with students at the college level, and one thing I discovered is that many students, they don't know what they want in
Mm.
life, even like in their early 20s. And I mean, you
Yeah.
discovered your calling so early, but many people still struggle. And even like beyond students, even like many adults, I work with or I interact with on a daily basis, many people are waiting for that mid-age crisis to come. I think at least that's
Mm.
my case, to wait for that moment to wake up their soul. Like, what is my calling? Is this my dream, or my parents' dream, or my society's dream? And
Mm.
really interesting. I really loved how you talk about this self-awareness. So why do you think that is the case? Why do you think we don't really talk so much? Even either at home or in the traditional school environment, like this notion of the self, cultivating a
Mm.
deep understanding of who you are, what you are really good at. But we spend so much time learning about all those historical figures, this and
Mm.
that, but we spend so little time, going within. What is your theory?
Yes. I think it comes down to all of the noise. Unfortunately, we live in this age where there's so much, there's an abundance of things to learn, things to do. And we have outside pressure, we have peer pressure, we have parental pressure, we have pressure from our teachers. We have all these voices in our lives, all of this content to consume. And so it's harder than ever to embrace going inside and tapping into our own talents and really like stopping and asking ourselves, what is it that we would love to do the rest of our lives?
Yeah.
And I think the reason I asked that question was it was kind of like it felt life or death for me, where I was in this cult growing up and things were bad and there was abuse. And so I
Hmm.
was just like, okay, I have to find something that would make me happy. And if you stop and ask yourself, like, what is that one thing that you love to do that, if you were holed up in a room alone for a day, what is the one thing that you could do and enjoy? And
Hmm.
that is probably the thing that you should be doing the rest of your life. And if that's writing, there's so much opportunity today for writing that, again, like isn't taught in school, like copywriting, sales writing, ad copywriting. So there's so much opportunity once you know what your passion is, but that's where it
Totally.
begins.
Totally. I want to go back to the writing part. And here is a great comment. And thank you so much, everyone, for the comments, for joining us live from quite a few different countries. Really appreciate you guys. And I agree, this commitment, like embracing failures and mistakes. And it is another thing I think like our young children are so afraid of, failures
Yeah.
and mistakes. So I want to go back, you have a very successful agency and Express Writers. I'm going to share the link in the comment section, everyone. You should check it out. If you struggle with SEO, content writing, content marketing, definitely check out Julia and her company. And you guys hired so many people, like writers and maybe even young people, to work for you guys. So I wonder if you can share with us, after interviewing so many people, what are some observations that you made after doing so many interviews? And when it comes to being future ready, and are our students developing those strong writing skills to work for a company like yours?
Mm. Ooh, are we going to share the truth? Will
Absolutely.
not
Here,
be
remember,
pretty.
we disrupt education, but the goal is
Let's
it's not
do
to
it.
just disrupt, but to really
Mm.
future proof. Many people
Yes.
join us live as parents, and we want to learn. We need to hear from professionals. So share the truth with us.
Yes. Well, sad to say, we've been doing this for 9 years, right? So I started in 2011. And What we see today is worse than what it was last year, the year before, the year before
Wow.
that. What we see, especially in the emerging group of new college graduates, people that either have, and it can be a master's degree, it can be a bachelor's degree, associate's degree. What we see oftentimes with people that come out with a degree and they're kind of fresh and they're looking for that work from home writing position where they can kind of settle and just write content and get paid. What we see is in those graduates, there is an absolute lack of knowledge of how to craft the content that works. So, what do I
Wow.
mean by the content that works? Well, you have to actually unlearn what your AP professor taught you about writing because that doesn't work to grab an online audience. Like you have to unlearn those practices. And a really successful entrepreneur I follow, his name is Jason Friedman. He founded Basecamp, which is like a $40 million a year company. So one of the things that he has said is every single person they hire, they take the time to pretty much unlearn. I think he calls it like unteaching, teaching, but he makes sure that they know how to write a good email. And these emails that it can be any kind of communication, really, whether it's a sales email going out to a prospect, whether it's ad copy, whether it's an email campaign. It doesn't matter what the format, but you have to learn that engaging style of writing. And today, that style is almost informal rather than the formal, stuffy style that unfortunately we all learned in college. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of unlearning that has to be done for
I,
these college graduates.
I mean, it is so true. You almost wonder if this doesn't work. Why do they teach us that? Like, who is
Exactly. Hello. Why we need
like?
people like you educating in this space and
It is so interesting. I love how you mentioned unlearn, and I have to do so much unlearn myself because I do have a PhD, which is
uh,
many years on top of that. So I really learned the AP writing and later academic writing, and then which is a totally different language. No wonder nobody's reading my academic journal article. It is so boring, right? You don't use any picture, no video, and you don't even say I think. You say this person or this paper argues, which
mm,
is very depersonalized. But for
yeah,
online writing, you have to evoke emotions. So
yeah.
very, very interesting. So how I'm curious for those people like that you hire, how long does it take for you to unlearn, like train them to unlearn? How long will that take?
Yes. Well, for us, it's a careful balance because our agency, Express Writers, is the kind of clients that come in, they need great content and they need it created with minimal back and forth. So unfortunately in that agency, I can't like take on interns.
That's right.
I can't mentor, but that's why I launched my courses and workshops and teaching because I really want to do that. I want to change this space for people that are in their 20s, that are even in their 30s, 40s, you name the age, if they still haven't unlearned these practices, because that is holding them back in such a big way. But once you unlearn these practices you learn in college and you kind of strip away the fluff and you start learning the skills that matter, there is so much opportunity because the internet is like this wide open
Amen.
playing field, especially now with the government telling us you should work from home.
That is so true. That is so
Even more
true.
important.
It's
Yes.
so true. So true. Yeah.
But going
It is.
back to how I just wanted to mention an answer to that, how we educate writers. One thing we do for writers, we look for pretty much two things. Number one, they have to have a passion for it. That's more
Mm,
important to us than a degree, than really anything. And then number two, they have to have some experience working remotely and freelance, because if you don't know how to work from home, that is a huge that's something it's kind of a hurdle you have to overcome because it's not for everyone to
mm,
work from home, especially like to jump into a paid role right away and know how to have discipline and get paid. But we do offer for those people that meet those two criteria, they have passion and they have some experience working from home, we offer ongoing education. So we try
mm.
to We have our editorial team that helps mentor them. So we really, our goal at Express Writers is never to let a writer stay in one place, but to help them grow consistently.
Oh, I love this. Like so important, upskilling. Like for us, you are a lifelong student. I see myself as a lifelong student. We have
Yes.
to be constantly learning. But when you think about traditional education, and it is always funny to see my students, on commencement day, they throw away all the books. Like, yeah, the end of my learning. I laugh in my heart. I was like, wow, wait until you get to the real world, and then you will see how much you have to learn on a daily basis.
Yes.
And I love that. It's so good that you guys are doing that to continue to invest in our, in your staff to make sure they're doing good work. So here is a great question from Trey, and who is a young entrepreneur himself. I don't know how old you are, like 11 or 20 or something. He has been joining us live from UK. Thank you. So he asked you, hold on, what do you think are the key things everyone needs to have to be successful in life? Actually, I have a similar question. I want to expand on this question a little bit. So reflect on your journey. You are still, I joke, I'm much older than you. You're much younger than me, which is true, but you are a lot more successful. So reflecting on your journey, and what do you think are the really important soft skills and hard skills that you have that really help you get to where you are today? This driven, this just amazing woman, and this level of success.
That is a great question. And I don't think that's easy to answer in a few minutes. And this will probably be the first place I share this.
Whoa,
but I'm actually working on a 4th book as we speak. And it's going to be for this topic.
So fun. Oh my God, what's that?
So I don't know if you guys know this, but I actually inspired. She's the first person I mention in my acknowledgments because she gave me the entire idea for that book. So here we are again. I'm sharing my new book for the first time.
What I do is I'm really good at inspiring others to write books. So I don't feel like I have to write one.
True story.
Yeah. So tell us more. Yeah.
But so I've put some groundwork down. I've put together a table of contents. I've actually come up with an acronym. So this new book I'm writing is how to educate yourself, empower yourself, and here's the steps to take to go from like no skills that you can map to money to skills that actually make money. So that that really deserves a book because that is a whole topic. But for someone like Trey, I would say the most important things are, first of all, like open up your mind, get out of the box that the educational institutions kind of put us in. And yes, exactly. And a mentor, a person to look to for if you're not sure, like, what does it mean to get out of a box? Follow people like watch her show every week. You'll learn so much. And then on top of that, Ray Dalio is another amazing person who teaches this principle. And I recently picked up there's a new version of Principles, this massive, like 900-page book he wrote. There's a new version of it that I recommend for everyone. I'm actually reading it to my 5-year-old. And it's like a 30-page abridged version of Principles in illustrated format. But it shows you, like, you have to get out of this box that our system kind of puts you in and then spits you out in the world, and you are not ready for the real world. So number one, like, open up your mind, start following people that challenge the status quo thinking. And then number two, like, if we go back to what I said earlier, if you were stuck in a room for 8 hours, what would you do to have fun, to inspire creativity? What would you do with your time? That's probably your passion. So how can you map that to something that would be rewarding for the rest of your life? That is how to take passion and make money. But, like we said, that it's hard to answer that in just one short answer because it really is a pathway that you have to get started on. And just like you were saying, we have to be lifelong learners. That's also part of it. And then just remember, when it comes to what employers look for today, especially whenever you're using these skills to do online work, like if it's selling, if it's marketing, a lot of times you're going to have to unlearn these practices you learn in college. So it's really important to get your hands on books, to learn from teachers that are teaching these real world skills.
Amen. I'm a big advocate. The reason I kind of reinvented myself was because I'm so tired of my own students, including myself, learning from only academics. I think that's good. But also for certain field, for certain disciplines, you have to learn from practitioners, right?
Yes.
Makes so much sense. And I don't know, I see people are commenting. I think there is definitely a big gap. And I so agree with you. Learn from people who are actually practicing this makes a huge difference. Yeah. So here people are just intrigued, right? You have how many books, Julia? This is your number 4 coming up, right? And each of them is a best-selling book. So share with us, I like how has becoming a book author, a best-selling book author, benefited your career? Second, how do you do it? Like, how do you have the time? You run business, you have your mom, and you are online, you're creating content, you write those long articles. So what do you do? Like, what's your secret? You probably also sleep. Like, how do you balance everything? So 2
there
questions.
was a day when I did not get sleep. So luckily I've found out how to include sleep. But yes, that's a great question. And I don't think that question is asked enough, because whenever you get to a place of performing well, which is kind of where I would categorize myself. I mean, yes, I have bad days. I wake up grumpy, tired. It still happens. It's never not going to happen. But whenever you're in a place of performing really well, like a high performer, and you have that zone, amazing things can happen. And that zone really is mapped down to process. So you have to find your process. Once you know what you want to do, once you know the talent or 2 talents, I have 5 brands. It doesn't have to be just one thing that you do. In fact, I recommend to my students more than one thing, because then your eggs are not all in one brand, one basket. So for me, finding the time to do all these things. Well, first of all, if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, to go inside, know yourself, that's critical. You have to know your limits. You have to know what challenges you. You have to know your fears. And then the next step, once you know those things, is to challenge your fears head on and pretty much do what scares you. And then you will break through this glass wall and you will be performing at a level that you were dreaming of. So that's basically like the story of my life. So if we go back to thinking of who you are, the Enneagram test, Strength Finder, I recommend all of those. For me, on the Enneagram test, I think I'm a 7. I'm a challenger. So I'm someone who basically eats challenges for breakfast. Like that's my thing. And my husband is sometimes worried about me, like, what are you taking on today? Are you going to be okay? But that is just who I am. And, with coronavirus, with the lockdown happening, what I found is that my outlet again has become what I create. So yesterday I had this 8-hour marathon where I was just creating content, and it was balm to my soul. It was how I got back and found my joy again. So you have to know what challenges you. You have to know what your strong suit is. You have to know your personality and then match your process to that. So for me, my process, is not getting up at 4 a.m. anymore. I get up at a very healthy hour. In fact, during coronavirus, I've been sleeping in. So I find that my patterns, I work well at night. So I have a couple hours in the evening where I'm actually writing, working, researching. And then I step away in the morning, step away in the afternoon. So I kind of have these work sprints where I get a lot done in those sprints, like far more than I would get done if I sat at the desk for, a 9-hour stretch. And I still have those stretches, but I actually never schedule them. I try to just look for the days I feel really creative, and then I take advantage of that, because you can't force creativity, and that's a fact. You can't.
Love that. I love that. I remember, when I interviewed Duncan Wardle on the show a few weeks ago, he's the former VP of innovation at Disney. And he
Mm.
asked quite a few people, like 5,000, I think, this question, where did you gain your most creative idea, most innovative idea? And everybody mentioned, shower, taking a walk,
Yeah.
and outside at the park. And he said that after talking to 5,000 people, at least, nobody mentioned at work. So very interesting you mentioned that. Oftentimes we think today is my day to be creative, and you're sitting in front of your computer, we are giving us so much stress, and how can you be creative when you're in that stress mode? So I think your point just reinforced that. I love that. Yeah, very good. Yeah. So how long, share, how long for your last book, this one just you just published, how long did it take you to from ideation to where you are today publishing?
Yes, that's a great question. And, not a lot of people actually get to see the inside of the author's process. So this is a great topic. If we go back to the first book, I waited 5 years before I tried to even write a book. So I just focused on practicing my trade, becoming really good at it, hiring people that elevated what we did, that I could pay to repeat the process. So I learned delegation, I learned my processes. We got really good at what we did. We became known for it. So that was my first book. So You Think You Can Write. And that book was so painful. It was the only thing I can compare it to is childbirth. It was terrible. It was awful. I was up all hours in the night. I kept finding typos. I was stressing myself out. The week before it went live on Amazon, I had no time with my 4-year-old. I've made it up since, but that first book was really stressful. The second book, which was actually double the size. So the first book took me about 2.5 years. The second book, Practical Content Strategy and Marketing, was double the size, went from 180 pages to 380. That book took me 8 months, and it was easy. So I was spitting out content that I knew and practiced every day. So that was me 7 years in the industry. Now, my third book, because I take on challenges, the third book is a narrative nonfiction memoir. So it breaks every genre. I'm a writer, not a speaker, I always say. So it breaks every genre that I've written in. It's not marketing. It's not, it's none of that. So I challenge myself with it. I read about 30 memoirs before I wrote it. And I studied the style of the best-selling memoirs. So, and I knew I had a story to tell because way back 3.5 years ago, you told me on Twitter, after you heard my story, that should be a book. And then I kept hearing that. So I'm like, okay, maybe I actually do have a book. So you sparked that whole journey. So major shout out to you. But that book took me about 2 years to write, and it's just shy of 400. I think it's 380 pages. So that book took me a longer time because it was a personal journey. And I really encourage everyone who's an entrepreneur who's going to commit to entrepreneurship for years to come, think about writing a book, because by now these books have become pretty much my marketing engine for so many things, for my courses, for our agency. It's a keyword that is indexed in Amazon. You can't get that with any other content format. So the pain, there's a lot of pain in writing a book. The pain is totally worth it. And by now, writing book content, I can't do it, I can only do it about half of the year. And then I need the other 6 months as a complete brain break. So half of the year, I'm not writing this long form content. So I found that out about myself. If I don't have a complete brain break from book writing, my books, I think, would turn out to be terrible. So that's important to remember, that I think the best authors, even Jeff Goins, Seth Godin, they have processes, and that's really important to remember.
Oh, I love this answer. Too bad I can't share my screen right now because I just got a new computer, but I did share the links to Julia's book in the comment section. Everyone should check it out. Yeah, definitely. And thank you for sharing that process. I agree. It is the first one might be the hardest one, and if you just keep practicing, and eventually you will become better. So here's a question I think someone asked: do you recommend self-publishing, and do you think that's a good, or you have to wait until you find a good deal, a good publisher, and then do it?
So you're asking someone who's self-published every single book. So my answer, and I actually, so if we go back in time, I actually thought about taking this new book to a traditional publisher, and I did. I took it to HarperCollins, and there was an agent that said, with my social proof, with what I've done, where I've been published, he could totally get me in, but I would have to cut my book down to half size and take out the polarizing scenes. And I just couldn't do that. And in fact, I had met some memoir authors that were breaking the norms with that. They actually heard the same thing from the publishing industry. And now their books they're a #1 bestseller, and they've held that spot for 5 years. And now they're being approached by people like HarperCollins saying, hey, here's a 6-figure check. We want your book. And these authors are saying no, because they found out once you self-publish, like, you don't go back. First of all, the royalties, you get 70 to 80% of every sale. So there's that. And then if you look at traditional publishing, you only get like 2 to 8%. And then the other part of it is, and this is the part that as a creative, I just couldn't agree to with that agent, you have to give up every part of the process. The traditional publisher is in charge of your artwork, your editing stages, your timeline, your marketing. So it's like, if you're an entrepreneur, you might as well do it yourself, because you'll get so much higher return.
Totally. I feel like just like today we're talking about education, the traditional publishing industry is another industry that needs to be totally disrupted. And our mutual friend, we love Mark Schaefer, and he has quite a few self-published books, and they are all best-selling books, right? Like Known. I love that book on personal branding, how to become known in the digital space. It's such a great book, self-published. So I agree. Yeah.
Have you heard his horror story? He started out with a traditional publisher, and he stopped pretty early on. And now, like, 5 or 6 of his books are self-published. He stopped early on because they wouldn't, it was the Twitter book, the book on Twitter. They wouldn't give him back his rights to update it. They said, no, you can't update your book. So he was like, yeah, no, self-publishing. Hello, self-publishing.
It makes so much sense. Actually, I experienced something similar, not for my book, but when I was teaching, in the traditional school environment, when I wanted to update my syllabus, like I had to, they didn't tell me I cannot update, but I have to go through quite lots of applications to do that, which is so, it's not worth it. And so I had a little bit taste of that. Yeah. So I want to kind of go back to education a little bit. That's kind of our topic today. So what do you think? We already shared a lot. We have some young people or parents joining us live right now. They have children. So what do you think are the pros and cons of a college degree? Should they go or should they not go? What do you think? I know you also wrote quite a few comprehensive articles on this topic. I'm also going to share the links in the comment section, everyone. You can check it out.
Yes, great question. Well, I would say number 1, it depends on what you're going for. If this is anything in the medical industry career, get a degree. Don't self-teach how to poke other people with needles. Just nope. So it depends on what you're going for. And if it's, if it's that, if you want to be a doctor, a nurse, any kind of medical practitioner, that's an important field to absolutely go to college for. But if it's any of the emerging industries like marketing, content marketing is this massive emerging industry right now. Like content marketing alone is worth over $400 billion.
Wow.
So you can make some serious income in this industry as a content marketer, content strategist, content writer, and that list goes on and on. So marketing has all of these subcategories that are worth billions of dollars that are kind of emerging right now. And what's funny is whenever I was going to college for a nursing degree, People were telling me back then, whenever I started to talk about my love of writing and how I made my first online paycheck at 13 years old. So whenever I was sharing that with my peers in nursing school, they're like, why are you trying to be a nurse? You'd make a lot more money doing that. And I was like, that was the first time I'd heard it because my parents never encouraged me to pursue my passion. They were definitely traditional thinkers. So that was the first time I heard that. And I was like, really? I can make more money writing online? And true story, probably double or triple per year versus being a nurse. So it's a fact that if you break into these emerging industries of marketing and then all the subcategories of that, there's so much of an imprint you can have, not just income, but like you can build a brand that lasts, you can be known. So, if it's not in the medical industry and the other critical industries that you have to have a degree for, I would strongly consider not going to college. And the main reason is because if you go, the debt doesn't really pay off. That's a sad fact about America and college debt right now. And then number two, you could actually be harming your skills because what you learn in college for marketing, and I took on she hasn't graduated yet, but for my new brand, Content Hacker, I took on a college student, and I've been trying to work with her to help her learn how to post on Instagram, best practices. And she's really smart. I don't know if she's watching this right now. Her name's Marty, but she's really smart. But what is really sad is that, every time I ask her, have they taught you this about Instagram? Have they taught you this about LinkedIn, Twitter? No, I don't hear any of that. And she's going for a marketing degree. So it's crazy how this isn't being taught in college. In fact, like you're learning things that are possibly irrelevant, if not damaging to what you actually have to learn.
I mean, I laugh. It is so true because I work with those people who have no idea how to use social media, but they are teaching social media, and they are not even allowed to be on social media by their schools.
Gosh.
Like, I think the same thing is in the business discipline, right? How many professors who teach a business school class, they have never run a business before. I think it is a very, very common issue. And in fact, I heard from one of my friends, and he actually went to Harvard for business school, and he told me he didn't go for the knowledge, he actually go for the network, and he actually learned from other places. I mean, he probably has the money to spend, but like, it is very interesting when you think about that, right? You go to the school not to learn, but actually to network, and you learn the knowledge from somewhere else. And I think that is a big way to, slap our own face. Like, what are we doing in our educational space if we are now teaching? Yeah. So I love how you mentioned. So what are some like alternative learning platforms? Let's say that I want to become a content writer. Of course, I'm going to follow you, or become a creative artist or entrepreneur. What are some alternative platforms that people can learn, can self-educate to get to where they want to be?
Yes. Well, there's so much. The good news, the bad news is you might have to unlearn what you're learning in college and marketing business. But the good news is that there are so many practitioners now that are they're finding their foothold in the course industry, in the education industry. So because of these massive practitioners, and we're talking people that are making like, $8 million a year doing what they do, they have started teaching and they're passing these lessons on to us. So that's an amazing thing that we can really grab a hold of and learn from. And one thing that I recommend all the time, if you don't have the income means to invest in a course yet, think about podcasts. There's so many podcasts out there where you can learn so much. And one of the really good ones for business marketing is Amy Porterfield. And she has like 250, 300 episodes out by now. So there's so much content there you can consume and learn from. James Wedmore is another great podcaster, Brendan Bouchard. And then on top of podcasting, it's really good to read or listen to books. Like we mentioned, Mark Schaefer, that's a great author. I would recommend Marketing Rebellion on Audible. It's amazing. If you don't have time to read books, I think it's almost getting easier to listen to books than it is to read books. But, it's still good to have both formats. Another really good author to follow is Grant Baldwin. He published a book called The Successful Speaker. I have it on my desk. And this book, The Successful Speaker, is gold for anyone that's wanting to learn how to take their skills and make a living online. And this book can be applied to more than speaking. I just kept going. I was like, uh-oh.
That's great. That's why everyone, FYI, that's why I love StreamYard so much. Even if for a second, you lost your Wi-Fi, the show continues. So thank you for doing that, Julia.
That's great. Wow,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So books, podcasts, Grant Baldwin, Amy Porterfield, James Wedmore. Look for people that are, number one, like proven in their space. They have decades, or if not decades, years and revenue, because that's proof. That's proof that what they're doing is selling, it's working. So you want to look for teachers that have, just like we were saying, practitioners.
Totally. Yeah.
Great books. That's something you can tap into too.
Yeah, and I want to go back to you mentioned earlier, student loan and debt in the US. I was actually doing some research to get prepared for our interview. In the United States, the percentage is pretty high. I forgot. And quite a number of couples, they decide to not have children because of student debt. And that is like, as a mom, that makes me feel like, wow, so sad. It is a big crisis right now. And when you are learning alternatively, you can learn better and save so much cost. And I think another thing is like most students, they go through the traditional education without really understanding what do I want in life. So they may get a degree eventually. They decide, oh, this is not really I want. And then somehow they got stuck in that major or in that track. They already invested so much. And it's very hard for them to move. They are not nimble enough, to move, to switch between majors without adding additional costs. And that I want to add that point. That's why I love homeschooling. We have so much freedom. If this way doesn't work, hey, we can easily switch to another curriculum, or design our own. Yeah. So, but that's student loan debt is a great problem. So here's, I think someone asked if you have a guide on self-publishing. Do you have an article on that?
I actually haven't taken the time yet to create a guide, and I've been asked to do a guide and a course. And every time I sit down and think of a guide and a topic, there's so much. And it's like, okay, this needs to be a course.
Yeah, of course, maybe even like a book, because I see that as the trend, and maybe a book or a course, and like people, hey, here's something else for you to work on.
I'll just keep coming on your show and get my new book ideas.
Totally. And so what do you think, we talk a lot about education. What do you think are the missing, like, let me ask you this. If you had the resources and the budget, of course, and the time, what does an ideal school look like to you? What would you add, curriculum-wise, activity-wise, to this ideal school?
What a great question. Well, there, before the lockdown happened, I actually had a chance to go down to Austin. We live in Austin, Texas, and we live in Round Rock, but we go to Austin all the time. So I went to Austin and saw their brand new library, and I brought my 5-year-old. This library is amazing. It's like a 6-story library, and they built it around like the concept of open air and creativity. So right when you step in, like you can see straight up to the 7th floor ceiling.
Wow.
The top floor has this balcony that wraps around the whole library, where you can get this panoramic view of Austin. So as I was seeing that and how they've constructed this new library, I've never seen a library like this. It's amazing. They have this giant wall clock. It's like 50 feet high, and it's in the shape of a bird, and it's like tweeting instead of TikToking. So all these little things that inspire creativity as I looked around, and I think like that's where it starts. We have to have spaces that aren't these traditional boxy rooms where we're stuffing kids in and here's the curriculum, let's learn it, go home. Like that doesn't work. I think we need to reinvent the entire model, starting with the space, and then of course the educators. I think in the end, it's almost almost a matter of less needs to
Mm.
happen in education. So kids have the time and the space to go pursue what they love doing, to go hole up in that corner with a book. And like what you were saying about homeschooling, one side effect, it was both bad and good, of growing up in this closed cult that I grew up in. We were homeschooled all of our lives, my sister and I, and we didn't have any social interaction, right? So I've had to learn that, and that's not been easy. But the good side was that our schooling at home allowed us to go in that corner, pick up this giant book and read it through in a matter of, days, hours sometimes. I was a voracious reader. So, you don't really see that in school systems where it's kind of up to the kid to pick what they enjoy to read, what they enjoy to
Amen.
consume. And then from there, like so many great ideas, things can be sparked in our kids. Like
Oh,
that's
so
where
true.
creativity comes from. But the whole process is kind of anti that. And going back to what we talked about earlier, Ray Dalio in Principles really talks about this. Like the first step to success is getting out of the boxes that we
Mm.
were put in by the system. That's the first step of finding success. Like we have to think about life as this like open river that we're
Mm.
flowing down, and we're finding our channels instead of being stuck in a box of, here's college, here's your cubicle, this is where you're going to live and make money the rest of your life. No, we have to reinvent that.
So true. So true. I mean, like when you think about it, when our students go to school, what we do, we obey, we follow orders. And
Yeah.
when I pick up my children or interact with other parents, my parents will hear them say this aloud. Did you listen to the teacher? Hey, listen to the teacher. The teacher knows everything. And so from a very young age, we still instill this into our children. Listen to the teacher. Stop asking questions, right?
Mhm.
And it's very like disruptive to how they grow. We are slowly and softly killing our children's curiosity and imagination, even though with our very good intention. So I really love that. Did you read the book Educated? So this woman, do you know that book Educated?
Yes,
What?
Tara Westover.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. She spoke at Yinbang last year, and she has like while listening to
Wow.
you, and reminds me of her story. And those of you who don't know that book, you should definitely check it out. Educated,
Mhm.
and this lady also being very strange parents, and
Yeah.
she didn't even have books to read or
Yeah.
something. So she didn't study or learn anything until she was 17 years old. But today she has, her journey story is really amazing and just reminds me of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
she grew up on a mountain, isolated from everyone, and her dad was
Mhm.
like had guns by the door and believed everyone was out to kill them.
And they don't even like when when their kids got sick, they don't see like doctors. They
Yeah.
like stood outside, open their mouth, like sunshine cure them or something like
Yeah.
that. Really extreme
Crazy.
measures. But it's really interesting. I think, going back to education, when you think about it, like our children, they are wired to learn. They are
Mhm.
born with that desire to learn. When we look at babies, they want to learn. So for
Mhm.
this young lady, even though she hasn't learned anything, she has build that desire to learn. And I think,
Mhm.
that's what I do as a mom, to cultivate, to maintain that level of curiosity and desire,
Mhm.
passion for knowledge and for life. And so listening to your story really reminds me of that. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, well said.
Yeah, so beautiful. Yeah, so we're almost like an hour. So share any parting piece of advice with us. Like I see there's one question from a parent, he said that his kid, I'm not sure if it's she or he, just for any parents whose children, they love writing. Like you are such an amazing writer. So what can we do as a parent to cultivate their writing, make them, improve their writing skills, maybe even publish a book?
Mm.
And any advice you can share with us?
Yes. Well, I would say have them that's a great question. Have them well, if they're it depends on their age. If they're old enough, I would try to have them go find the authors that they want to follow and then make a list and purchase those books for them and maybe take time to read those books with them. So Jaina, my daughter, she's 5, she's already learning about what an author is. We're touching books, we're looking at author names on the title, And she knows that mommy's an author. So she's really excited by the idea of authors. And we've kind of picked out authors together. So she's 5. So I think you could do this almost at any age. But Amazon is a great tool for this, just to look at the keyword copywriting or the keywords online writing. And my first book, So You Think You Can Write, is a really good approach for complete beginners to online writing. And it's a really easy read. It's illustrated, so there's like fun cartoons going on in it. So that's a good book for anyone that's really, I would say, over the age of 8 even could understand the concepts in that book. And I created it at that level for a reason. I wanted to help educate our kids on online writing. So that's a good resource. And then on top of that, really cultivate the practice of writing, because no great writer, just becomes great. It's always a matter of practice. Even for me, like still today, I'm writing every day. And if I were to stop that, I'd probably start to go backwards.
Totally.
So, and depending on their age group, there was a 12-year-old that I mentored back when we lived in another city in Texas. And I encouraged her early on to start a freelance profile, because it's easy for anyone to do that now. So Upwork, while it's not a great platform and I don't recommend it long term to build a brand, you can't really do that. It's a great platform for beginners. So if your kid is at that age where they're able to sign up to a platform and look at paying gigs, that could be 13, 14, really young teenager.
Totally.
Encourage that. And then once they get their first taste of, I can write and get paid, no matter what pay it is, like it can be dollars, pennies, that's great practice.
Totally, 100%. And it's actually on top of that, because this is something I think a lot myself, and it's a great way for them to learn math. Because when you look at work on workbooks, 1+ is so boring. We actually already, throw away, like, let's just ditch the workbook. We don't do that. But my son now, he's like really into, and he saw this really amazing like top t-shirt he wants to buy for me, and he's actually organizing his old clothes that he wants to sell. This morning he was checking out eBay.
Wow.
I mean, he's only 8 years old, and if you can make learning personal and fun, and they can just figure it out. Totally.
Yes. 100%.
That's great. Yeah, this is such a great conversation, everyone. I shared Julia's contact information on the lower third. So please connect with Julia on Twitter. Any other places they can get a hold of you. Let me also share your website. So Express Writers and other places.
Yes. The other place additionally these days is contenthacker.com. So that's where I have I finally created one place to put all my books, courses, some of my best guides. I have a guide right now. I just updated it on contenthacker.com, and it is 50 platforms where you can find paying work.
Oh, wow.
So the blog up there in the header, and there's a free guide.
So where can I get that guide? Is something going to pop up, or?
If you go to the top and where it says blog, see in that menu on the right.
Oh, yeah.
Books. Yes. So that's where, there's the guide. We put it on the top of the screen.
Awesome.
Yeah. So those are some of the most in-depth guides that I've written on how to take your skills or even learn skills if you don't have them yet and make real money. And the book we talked about, can I share the title?
Oh my God, of course.
So this new book, my 4th book, I've been going back and forth on the title, but I'm pretty sure this is what I want it to be. And there's going to be a subtitle to clarify, but the title of the book will be Skip the Degree. Wow. So it'll actually teach you how to completely pass over the degree, tap into your core talents, your strengths using personality tests, strength finder, Enneagram test, and then match your strengths to a money-making skill, basically A to Z. And one of the things I'll be doing is I will be going and interviewing practitioners and people that have done this, some of them at an even bigger level than I have. And I want to get with people like Dr. I for some of the chapters.
I want to be a co-author. I love this. This is amazing. I love this. Yeah, I think, I saw Alice, she was talking about this because She asked how many parents are prepared for this type of learning and education. I think not many are, but the number is going to increase and needs lots of education. That's what I do almost on a daily basis. I educate parents, I educate teachers on the emerging trends. I think a book like this to show them almost a roadmap, a blueprint. This is something you can do, give them some options, open their mind, help them unlearn a little bit. So it's going to be another best-selling book for sure.
Thank you.
Oh, this is great. I can't wait to really check out another book from Julia McCoy. And thank you so much again for joining us live, everyone. I'm going to share the link to the PDF download in the comment section after we finish the show. Please make sure to download that to get really great ideas, to be inspired, and share that with your children. And thank you for joining us live, everyone, on Friday. I appreciate you guys. And I hope to see you next Friday. Same time, same location. And Julia McCoy, you are amazing. You never cease to impress me, my dear.
Thank you. Well, I feel the same about you.
Thank you so much, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.